All right, in this video we're going to be talking about number comparisons. Number comparison questions ask you to understand the language used in making comparisons of two things or more than two things. So your primary approach here is to always ask, are you comparing two or are you comparing more than two? And make a definitive decision about what words you should use if it's two or more than two. More versus most. If you're comparing two things, you're going to use more. And if you're comparing more than two things, you're going to use most. You really want to just make sure that anytime you see either more or most on an SAT question, you're asking yourself, should it be the other one? If you do that, these questions will not sneak by you. So in this first example here, we have James Joyce's novel Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake are both difficult to understand, but Ulysses is the more popular among students, is the most popular among students, excuse me. Now this is incorrect because we're only dealing with two books, so we're going to say more here and not most. So the right way to say it would be, are both difficult to understand, but Ulysses is the more popular among students. So again, it's really just about making sure you're looking for the words more and most, and you're always asking, should you use the other word? And it's always just a matter of, are you comparing two things? You should use more. Or are you comparing more than two, in which case you should use most? The next number comparison you should be concerned about is ER versus EST. This just has to do with whether you say faster or fastest, smaller or smallest. Again, if it's two things, it's going to be ER. And if it's more than two things, it's going to be EST. If you look at the example here, of the 3 TVs for sale, the Sony has a clearer picture. Since we're talking about more than two things, that needs to say the clearest picture. If we said of the 2 TVs, then that would be correct. The Sony has the clearer. So again, just be on the lookout for ER and ESTs and make sure that you're asking yourself, are we comparing two or are we comparing more than two? The last of the 3 that you should be aware of is between versus among. While it's the most subtle of the 3, you do want to be aware so you can make the right decision. Again, it's a decision you need to make between 2 or 3 things. If it's 2 things, it should be between, and if it's more than 2, it should be among. So here's an example of between being used incorrectly. Thanks to the meeting, there was quickly agreement between Sarah, Katie, and Tracy. Since there's 3 people here, we need to say among. So the correct answer would say, thanks to the meeting, there was quickly agreement among Sarah, Katie, and Tracy. So let's look at 2 examples. This is a error ID example, so we're trying to determine which of the underlined portions is incorrect. Steve and Keith are both great football players. R is correct because it's Steve and Keith. But Steve is the quicker of the 2, and Keith is the most powerful. Now, let's look at the quicker. The ER ending is correct here because we're comparing 2 people, so that's fine. But the word most should be more because, again, when we're comparing 2 things, we use more and not most. Let's look at another example. Seven Samurai and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly are very similar movies, but Seven Samurai is the longest of the 2. So the issue here is the word the longest. Again, if we're comparing 2, we're going to be looking for the ER ending and not the EST ending, so it should read, but Seven Samurai is the longer of the 2. Thanks for listening to our conversation about number comparison. Remember to always ask yourself if you're comparing 2 or more things. I'll see you in the next video.